The mare's coat gleamed like winter wheat in the late afternoon sun, and Clara Vance knew she could not afford even a single hair on its body. She stood at the edge of the Fort Worth stock auction yard, dirt clinging to the hem of her black mourning dress, watching buyers shuffle past rows of horses tied to split-rail fencing. The air hung thick with dust and the sharp smell of animal sweat. Men called out prices, hands shot up, deals closed with handshakes and the clink of coins. Clara's reticule hung light against her hip, containing $3.47, her father's pocket watch, and a crumpled letter from her Uncle Samuel in Gunnison, Colorado, promising her a home if she could just get there. The problem was distance. Fort Worth to Gunnison stretched over 700 miles of hard country, and the stage fare alone would eat through twice what she had. She needed a horse. Not a fancy one, just something steady that would not throw her or collapse halfway through New Mexico territory. The gentle-looking mare before her fit that description perfectly. Dappled gray, maybe 14 hands, with kind eyes and no visible meanness in her stance. An older horse, probably past her fastest years, but that suited Clara fine. She had never been much of a rider anyway. A man leaned against the fence beside the mare, one boot propped on the lower rail. He wore a dusty brown hat pulled low, dark hair curling slightly at his collar, and a blue shirt faded nearly gray from sun and washing. His face was all angles, sharp jaw covered in a few days of stubble, and when he glanced her direction his eyes were the color of creek water, gray-green and unreadable. Clara smoothed her skirt and walked over, trying to project confidence she did not feel. Her father had been dead 12 days. She had sold their room and board, settled his debts, and now stood in a strange city with empty pockets and a long road ahead. "Excuse me," she said. "Is this your horse?" The man straightened slightly, touching the brim of his hat. "Yes, madam. I need to buy her." The words came out more desperate than she intended. Clara cleared her throat. "How much are you asking?" He looked at her for a long moment, his gaze moving from her mourning dress to her worn boots to the nearly empty reticule at her side. Something shifted in his expression, though his face remained mostly still. "Where are you headed?" he asked instead of answering. "Colorado, Gunnison. My uncle has a ranch there." "That is a far piece, I know." Clara lifted her chin, "which is why I need a good horse. This one looks gentle enough not to kill me before I get there." The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. "She is gentle. 10 years old, sound legs, good temperament, will not spook easy. Perfect. So how much?" He pushed off from the fence, standing to his full height, which put him a good half-foot taller than her. He studied her again with those creek water eyes, and Clara felt her cheeks warm under the scrutiny. "One supper," he said finally. Clara blinked. "I am sorry, what?" "One supper." "You cook me dinner, the mare is yours." She stared at him, certain she had misheard. "Sir, I do not think you understand. I need to actually purchase this horse. With money. Or rather, I would if I had any, which I do not. But I thought perhaps we could work out some kind of arrangement, or maybe you would take this watch as partial payment, though I know it is not worth much. And one supper," he repeated, his voice quiet but firm. "That is my price." "But that is absurd. This horse is worth at least $40, probably 50. A supper costs maybe 2 bits. Not to me." Clara felt off balance, like the ground had tilted when she was not looking. "I do not understand. Do not need you to understand. Just need to know if you can cook." Yes, I can cook. My father and I ran a boarding house in St. Louis before his lungs gave out. But sir, truly, I cannot accept such a trade. It is not fair to you." "I will decide what is fair to me." He untied the mare's lead rope from the fence. "There is a boarding house 2 streets over, Mrs. Henderson's place." She will let you use her kitchen if you ask nice and offer to clean up after. I will meet you there at 7 o'clock tonight. You cook me one good supper and this mare is yours, along with saddle, bridle, and bedroll." Clara's throat tightened. She had not cried when they buried her father, had not cried when she sold their furniture for half what it was worth, had not cried through any of the hard, grinding days since his death. But this man's unexpected kindness threatened to undo her composure entirely. "Why?" she managed. He handed her the lead rope, his fingers brushing hers briefly. They were calloused and warm. "Because you need a horse and I need a good meal. Seems simple enough." "What is your name?" "Beckett Quinn, Clara Vance." He touched his hat brim again. "Miss Vance, 7 o'clock." Then he walked away, leaving her standing in the auction yard dust holding the lead rope of a horse that now apparently belonged to her in exchange for a single meal she had not yet cooked. Clara looked at the mare, who regarded her with patient, knowing eyes. "Well," Clara said to the horse, "I suppose I had better make it the best supper he has ever eaten." Mrs. Henderson turned out to be a round woman with shrewd eyes and a generous spirit. When Clara explained her situation, leaving out the more peculiar details of how she had acquired the mare currently tied outside, the boarding house owner agreed to let her use the kitchen in exchange for help with the supper dishes. "That Beckett Quinn is a good man, Mrs. Henderson said, showing Clara where she kept the flour and lard. "Quiet as a stone, but decent. Brought in a family last winter when their wagon broke down, paid for their room and board for 2 weeks until the husband could find work. Never said a word about it, but I knew." Clara filed this information away as she surveyed the kitchen. She had 3 hours to create something worthy of a $40 horse, no pressure whatsoever. She decided on fried chicken, biscuits, green beans with bacon, and an apple pie if there was time. Mrs. Henderson had a coop out back and agreed to provide 2 chickens at cost. Clara used one of her precious dollars, trying not to think about how that left her with $2.47 to get to Colorado. She butchered and cleaned the chickens with practiced efficiency, set them soaking in buttermilk and salt, then started on the pie crust. Her hands knew these motions from years of cooking for boarding house guests. Rolling dough, crimping edges, peeling apples into long spirals that dropped into a bowl. The kitchen grew warm and fragrant. The physical work settled her nerves. At 6:45, Mrs. Henderson poked her head in. "He just arrived. Waiting in the dining room. Want me to show him in?" "Give me 5 minutes." Clara checked her reflection in the window glass. She had taken off her mourning bonnet, and her dark hair was pinned up, though wisps had escaped around her face from the kitchen heat. Her dress was still black, still marked her as a woman in grief, but at least she had wiped the dust from her cheeks. She arranged the food on Mrs. Henderson's good plates, carrying everything to the dining room on a large tray. Beckett stood when she entered. He had cleaned up too, she noticed. Fresh shirt, face shaved, hair still damp like he had dunked his whole head in a water basin. He looked younger without the stubble, maybe 25 or 26, not much older than her own 22 years. "Please sit," Clara said, suddenly nervous. She set the plates down, the chicken golden and crispy, the biscuits steaming when she split one open to show the fluffy interior. "I hope you like it." Beckett sat, but his eyes were on her, not the food. "This is too much. You said a supper, I made supper. I meant maybe some stew or beans." "Well, you were not specific, so I improvised." Clara poured coffee from the pot Mrs. Henderson had provided. "Please eat before it gets cold." He picked up his fork, cut into the chicken, took a bite. Clara watched his face, trying to read his reaction. His expression barely changed, but he took another bite, then another. He reached for a biscuit, split it, added butter that melted into golden pools. "You can really cook," he he said finally. "I told you I could. Most people say they can cook and mean they can boil potatoes without burning water." Despite everything, Clara smiled. "Well, I promise I can also boil potatoes without burning water, but I thought for a $40 horse I should aim slightly higher." $50 horse, he corrected. "Maybe 60. She is worth more than I let on." Clara sat down across from him, pouring herself coffee but not taking any food. Her stomach felt too twisted to eat. "Why are you doing this, really?" Beckett was quiet for a moment, working on the green beans. "You ever been hungry, Miss Vance?" "Not just missed a meal hungry, but days on end. Wonder if you are going to make it hungry." "No," she admitted. "Even when we had little, my father always made sure I ate." "I have. Was 16, parents both gone to typhoid, no family to take me in. Wandered for 3 months trying to find work. Got so thin I could count every rib. Finally stumbled into a ranch outside San Antonio, ready to collapse. The owner, man named Dutch Carmichael, took one look at me and told his wife to set another plate. They fed me, let me sleep in the barn, gave me a job. Never asked for anything in return except honest work." He met her eyes across the table. "You needed help, I can give it, that is all." Clara felt that tightness in her throat again. "Thank you, truly. Thank you for the meal, best I've had in months, maybe years." They sat in companionable silence while he ate. Clara sipped her coffee and watched twilight deepen outside the window. The dining room lamp cast warm light across the table. It felt strangely intimate, this shared meal with a man she had met only hours ago. Like something from a different life, one where she was not alone and desperate. "Tell me about your father," Beckett said suddenly. The question caught her off guard. "What about him? What was he like? You wear mourning clothes, so he has not been gone long." 12 days. Clara wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. "He was a bookkeeper before his lungs failed. Always meticulous, kind, terrible at business but wonderful with numbers. We moved to Texas hoping the dry air would help him breathe, but it came too late. He just wore out." "I am sorry." "Me too." She looked down at her cup. "He was all I had. Now my Uncle Samuel is all I have, and I barely know the man. He visited us once when I was 8. Mostly I remember his big mustache and the fact that he smelled like horses. Most ranchers do. Do you smell like horses, I mean? Probably." Clara surprised herself by laughing. It felt strange, laughing while wearing mourning black, but also necessary. Like her body had been holding tension for so long it needed the release. Beckett almost smiled again, that tiny twitch at the corner of his mouth. He finished the last of his chicken and looked at the empty plate with something like regret. "There is pie," Clara offered. His eyebrows rose. "You made pie too." "I had time and Mrs. Henderson had apples." She fetched the pie from the kitchen, cut 2 generous slices even though she still was not hungry. The crust was perfect, flaky and golden, and the filling smelled like cinnamon and autumn. Beckett took a bite and closed his eyes briefly. "If your uncle does not appreciate you, he is a fool. I will be sure to tell him you said so." "Do that." They finished the pie and Clara cleared the dishes, refusing Beckett's offer to help. She had promised Mrs. Henderson she would clean up, and besides, she needed a moment alone to collect herself. This whole day felt surreal. This morning she had been at the end of her rope. Now she owned a horse and had shared supper with a kind stranger who asked nothing from her but a meal. When she returned to the dining room, Beckett stood by the window, hat in hand. "The mare is yours, Miss Vance. I left papers with Mrs. Henderson showing change of ownership in case anyone questions you along the way. The saddle and gear are out front. Just like that, just like that. A deal is a deal." Clara crossed the room, stopping a few feet from him. In the lamplight his eyes looked more green than gray. "I do not know how to thank you properly. You already did. That meal was worth 10 horses. Now you are just being kind. No, I am being honest. He settled his hat on his head. Colorado is a long ride, especially for someone who admits they are not much of a rider. You know the route. I have a map. Maps do not show everything. You will want to head northwest through Jacksboro and up to Amarillo. From there, angle toward Raton Pass. It is a tough crossing but safer than the alternatives this time of year. Once you are through the pass, Gunnison is a straight shot north. That sounds complicated. It is about 30 days if you are careful, maybe less if you push. Do not push. Better to arrive tired than not arrive at all. Clara nodded, committing his words to memory. I will be careful. Get yourself a rifle if you can afford one. 44 caliber is good. Not for people, just for predators. Mountain lions and bears do not care that you are a woman alone. I do not know how to shoot. Then learn. Find someone in every town to give you a lesson. It could save your life. The way he said it, flat and serious, sent a shiver down her spine. This was real. She was about to ride 700 miles alone through country that could kill her a dozen different ways. You are scared, Beckett observed, terrified. Good. Fear makes you cautious. Just do not let it make you stupid. That is unusually specific advice. Saw a man once so scared of rattlesnakes he shot at every rope and stick on the trail. Ended up shooting his own foot. Clara could not tell if he was joking. Did he survive? No, infection got him 3 days later. Oh, point is, be smart. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Beckett moved toward the door, then paused. What is your uncle's full name? Samuel Vance. He owns a ranch outside Gunnison called the Silver Creek Outfit. Something flickered across Beckett's face, too quick to read. I know it, or I know of it. Is that good or bad? It is a big operation. Your uncle is a wealthy man. Then why did my father die poor? The bitterness in her voice surprised her. Beckett had no answer for that. He opened the door, letting in the night air, cool now after the day's heat. Safe travels, Miss Vance. I hope Colorado treats you well. Thank you again, Mr. Quinn, for everything. He touched his hat brim one last time and walked out into the darkness. Clara stood in the doorway watching until he disappeared around a corner. Then she went to look at her new horse, her ticket to a new life, purchased for the price of fried chicken and apple pie. The mare nickered softly when Clara approached, her breath warm and grassy. Clara ran a hand down her neck, feeling the solid reality of muscle and bone. I suppose I should name you, Clara said. Something that means hope or luck or possibly miracles, given how today went. The horse just stood there, patient and steady. Grace, Clara decided. I will call you Grace because that is what this feels like. She spent that night at Mrs. Henderson's boarding house, paying for a room with another of her precious dollars. In the morning, she would begin the long journey to Colorado. For now, she lay in a narrow bed, listening to unfamiliar sounds through thin walls, and thought about creek water eyes and a man who measured a horse's worth in kindness instead of currency. Sleep came eventually, and with it dreams of open roads and distant mountains. Clara left Fort Worth 3 hours after dawn, giving herself time to organize her supplies and receive a lengthy lecture from Mrs. Henderson about the dangers facing young women alone on the frontier. The boarding house owner pressed a small Derringer pistol into Clara's hands along with a box of cartridges. It is not much, but it is better than nothing, Mrs. Henderson said. Do not hesitate to use it if a man gets ideas. Clara tucked the tiny gun into her reticule, hoping she would never need to find out if she could actually shoot another human being. The ride north out of Fort Worth tested her immediately. Grace was indeed gentle, but Clara's riding skills were rusty at best. By noon her thighs ached and her back felt like someone had beaten it with a stick. She stopped frequently, walking beside Grace to give her own legs a rest, checking the map Beckett had drawn on the back of the ownership papers. The land stretched wide and brown, dotted with mesquite and scrub oak. Heat shimmered off the earth. Other travelers passed occasionally, mostly wagons and men on horseback who tipped their hats but did not stop. Clara kept to herself, following the rutted trace that passed for a road. That first night she made camp in a grove of cottonwoods near a creek. Her fire-starting skills proved abysmal. She wasted half a box of matches before finally coaxing a flame. Supper consisted of hardtack and jerky purchased that morning, washed down with creek water that tasted of minerals and silt. She lay in her bedroll, staring up through cottonwood leaves at a sky absolutely crammed with stars, more stars than she had ever seen in her life. The night sounds were foreign and slightly terrifying. Things rustled in the brush. An owl called. Far off, a coyote howled, setting off a chorus of answers. Clara clutched the derringer and did not sleep until exhaustion finally dragged her under sometime near dawn. The next few days blurred together. Riding, walking, camping, riding again. Her body slowly adapted to the demands. The ache in her thighs became a constant background presence she learned to ignore. Her hands developed blisters from the reins, then calluses over the blisters. She reached Jacksboro on the fourth day, a rough town of maybe 300 people, and spent $1 on a hot meal and a night in a real bed. The next morning she asked around about someone who could teach her to shoot. A deputy sheriff named Morrison took her out behind the jail and gave her an hour's lesson with her derringer and a borrowed rifle. "You have a steady hand," Morrison said, watching her hit a tin can 3 times out of 10 shots. "Practice more and you will be fine. Remember, aim low. Guns kick up when they fire." Clara thanked him, bought a used Winchester rifle for $8 that she could not spare, and left town with 50 cartridges and a new appreciation for the weight of responsibility that came with carrying weapons. The landscape changed gradually as she traveled northwest. Flatter, drier, more desolate. She saw buffalo in the distance once, a small herd moving across the plains like a dark tide. Another day she passed a burned wagon, just a skeleton of charred wood and a broken wheel. She did not stop to investigate. Amarillo was bigger than Jacksboro, more established with actual hotels and shops. Clara splurged on a bath and a laundry service for her clothes. Sitting in the hot water, washing away 2 weeks of trail dust, she let herself think about Beckett Quinn. She wondered what he was doing. Selling more horses, probably. Living his quiet life, being decent to strangers, saying 5 words when most men would say 50. She wondered if he thought about her at all, or if she was just one more person he had helped and then forgotten. The thought made her sad in a way she could not quite explain. After Amarillo, the trail climbed into higher country, the air thinner and cooler. The land rolled in long swells, covered in short grass that rippled like water in the wind. Pronghorn antelope watched her pass, bounding away in graceful arcs when she got too close. She was 3 weeks out from Fort Worth, camped beside a nameless creek, when she heard a horse approaching in the dusk. Clara grabbed her rifle, heart hammering, and stood up from her fire. A rider emerged from the gloom, tall, dark hat sitting easy in the saddle. Even before she could see his face clearly, Clara knew. Mr. Quinn. Beckett reined in his horse 20 feet away, hands visible and empty. "Evening, Miss Vance." Clara lowered the rifle, confused and inexplicably glad to see him. "What are you doing here?" "Heading to Colorado. Thought I might ride along if you do not mind the company." "You are going to Colorado?" "I am now." "That is an awfully convenient coincidence." He dismounted, leading his horse closer to her fire. "Can I be honest with you? Please do. I have been following you since Fort Worth, keeping back far enough you would not notice but close enough to make sure you stayed safe." Clara stared at him. "You have been following me for 3 weeks." "Yes." "That is either very protective or very concerning, and I am not sure which." "Protective," Beckett said. "Your Uncle Samuel Vance is not a good man, Miss Vance." I did not want to say anything in Fort Worth because I thought maybe I was wrong, or maybe you had no other choice. But the more I thought about it, the more I knew I could not just let you ride into a bad situation alone. The ground felt unsteady again. "What do you mean he is not a good man?" "Can I sit? This will take some explaining." Clara nodded, and Beckett unsaddled his horse, hobbled it near Grace, and settled by the fire. Clara sat across from him, rifle within reach, waiting. "I worked for your uncle 2 years ago," Beckett began. "Spent a winter on his ranch. He runs a big operation, maybe 300 head of cattle, 24 horses, employs 15 men year-round. He is wealthy, powerful, and mean. Treats his workers like property. I saw him beat a man half to death for talking back. Nobody did anything because everyone needed the job." Clara felt cold despite the fire. "Why would my father send me to him? Did your father know what Samuel was like?" "I do not think so. They were not close. Samuel wrote one letter after my father got sick, offering help if we ever needed it. It was the only option I had." Beckett poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks up into the darkness. "There is more. Samuel Vance has a son, Martin, who is lazy, mean, and drinks too much. Samuel wants Martin married off to someone who can settle him down. He has been looking for a suitable wife." Understanding hit Clara like a fist. "He wants to marry me to his son." "That is my guess. A poor niece with nowhere else to go would be perfect, desperate enough to agree, tied to him by blood so she can't easily run. But he does not even know me." "He does not need to know you. He just needs you compliant." Clara stood abruptly, walking to the edge of the firelight. Fury and fear warred in her chest. "So what am I supposed to do? I have less than $1 left. I have nowhere to go. No family besides Samuel. Do I just wander the wilderness until I starve or get eaten by a mountain lion?" "No." Beckett's voice was quiet but firm. "You keep going to Gunnison. You see what your uncle wants, and if it is as bad as I think, you have a choice." "What choice?" "Me." Clara turned to face him. "What does that mean?" Beckett stood, moving into the firelight so she could see his face clearly. "I am not good with words, Miss Vance. I am better with actions, but I will try to explain. When I saw you in that auction yard, I knew immediately you were someone worth knowing. When you insisted on paying fairly for Grace, I knew you were honorable. When you cooked that meal, putting your whole heart into it even though I was a stranger, I knew you were kind. Mr. Quinn, let me finish, please." He took a breath. "I am a horse trader and a ranch hand. I have $500 saved, a good reputation and decent prospects. I am 26 years old, healthy, and I do not drink or gamble. I can provide for a wife. Not luxuriously, but comfortably. And if you find yourself in Gunnison with no good options, I am offering to be your other choice." Clara's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. "Are you asking me to marry you?" "I am saying I would be honored to marry you if circumstances made it necessary, or even if they did not. We barely know each other." "True. Which is why I am not asking for an answer now. I am just saying the offer exists. You do not have to choose between a bad situation and nothing. There is a third option. This is insane. Probably. You cannot just propose to someone you met 3 weeks ago and spoke to for one evening. I am not proposing. Not formally. I am just making sure you know you have choices." Beckett met her eyes across the fire. "And I know it is fast. I know it is strange, but I also know what I feel, and I do not see the point in pretending I do not feel it. What do you feel? Like I would be a fool to let you ride out of my life." The words hung in the air between them, simple and devastating. Clara did not know what to say. Part of her wanted to tell him he was being ridiculous. Part of her wanted to cry. And a small, terrifying part wanted to say yes immediately, to grab this lifeline and hold on with both hands. Instead she said, "I need to think. Of course, take all the time you need. I will keep riding with you until Gunnison, if that is all right. Keep you safe. No expectations, no pressure, just company and protection." "That is fair." They stood looking at each other across the flames, and Clara thought how strange it was that her entire world could shift in the space of a single conversation. "I should get some sleep," she said finally. "Long ride tomorrow." "Yes, madam." She spread out her bedroll, acutely aware of Beckett doing the same on the opposite side of the fire. The camp settled into quiet, just the crackle of flames and the soft sounds of the horses moving nearby. "Mr. Quinn," Clara said into the darkness. "Yes." "Thank you for telling me the truth about my uncle, and for giving me a choice." "You are welcome, Miss Vance." Sleep took a long time coming. Clara lay watching stars wheel overhead and thinking about the strange mathematics of her situation. 3 weeks ago she had nothing. Now she had a horse, a dangerous destination, and apparently a cowboy who had fallen in love with her over fried chicken. Life was very odd sometimes. They rode together through the last week of July. The temperature climbed as they crossed into New Mexico territory, heading toward Raton Pass. The landscape turned dramatic, mesas rising like ancient fortresses, red rock glowing in the afternoon light. Beckett proved to be easy company. He did not talk much, but when he did speak his words were thoughtful. He taught her how to read the land, how to find water by watching where birds flew at dusk, how to build a fire that gave warmth without creating a smoke beacon for every outlaw and drifter within 20 miles. They fell into a comfortable routine. Beckett would scout ahead each morning, checking the trail for problems. They would ride until midday, stop to rest the horses, then continue until late afternoon. Camp, cook, talk quietly by the fire, sleep, up at dawn and start again. Clara found herself watching him when he did not notice. The way he moved, economical and sure. The way he listened, giving full attention to everything she said. The gentle competence with which he handled the horses, checking their hooves, adjusting tack, murmuring words of praise when they did well. He never pushed, never brought up his offer again. Just rode beside her and made her feel safe in country that was anything but. One evening, camped in a canyon with walls that glowed orange in the sunset, Clara asked him about his family. "All gone," Beckett said, turning a rabbit on a spit over the fire. He had shot it that afternoon and it smelled incredible. "Ma and Pa to typhoid, like I said, had a sister too, Mary. She died when she was 6, scarlet fever. I am sorry, long time ago." He checked the rabbit, decided it needed more time. "What about you, just your father?" "My mother died when I was born, complications, so it was always just Papa and me." Clara pulled her knees to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. "He never remarried. I think he loved her too much to try to replace her. That is devotion, or stubbornness. Sometimes I could not tell which." Beckett smiled, a real one this time, not just the corner twitch. It transformed his face, made him look younger and almost carefree. "Sounds like you take after him." "I suppose I do," Clara smiled back. "He would have liked you, I think." He always appreciated people who said what they meant and meant what they said. "I would have liked to meet him." They ate the rabbit with the last of Clara's cornmeal fried into cakes. The food was simple but satisfying. Full dark came while they ate, stars emerging in the strip of sky visible between canyon walls. "Can I ask you something?" Clara said, always. "Why horses? Of all the things you could do, why trade horses? Beckett considered this, taking his time. Horses are honest. They do not lie or scheme. If a horse does not like you, it shows you right away. If it trusts you, same thing. There is a purity to them. And when you match the right horse with the right person, when you see that connection form, it feels like you have done something meaningful. Like matching Grace with me. Exactly like that. You two are good together. She steadies you and you are kind to her. That is what it should be. You could have sold her for real money. Money is not everything. Easy to say when you have $500 saved. He laughed softly. Fair point. But I have been dead broke, remember. I know what money means and what it does not mean, and it does not mean much if you have no one to spend it with. The words settled over the camp like a blanket. Clara knew what he was really saying, the subtext beneath the simple statement. He was lonely. He had been lonely for a long time, and then he met her and suddenly he was not lonely anymore. She understood because she felt the same way. I think I am falling in love with you, Clara said quietly. Beckett went very still. You think or you know, I know. I am just scared to admit it because it feels too fast and too big, and I do not know what to do with feelings this large. You do not have to do anything with them right now. But eventually I will. When we reach Gunnison, I will have to make decisions. Then we will make decisions when we get there. Beckett reached across the fire, holding out his hand palm up. For now, can we just be two people who enjoy each other's company? Clara took his hand. His palm was rough, warm, solid, real. I think I can manage that. They held hands across the fire until the flames burned down to coals, and the canyon walls faded into darkness, and the stars overhead wheeled in their ancient patterns. Raton Pass tested them. The trail climbed steeply, switchbacking up through pine forests and over bare rock faces where one wrong step could send horse and rider tumbling. Clara's fear of heights made the crossing torture. She spent hours clinging to Grace's neck, eyes closed, trusting the mare's steady footsteps. Beckett stayed close, talking her through the worst sections in his quiet, calm voice. You are doing fine. Grace knows what she is doing. Just breathe. Look at me, not down. That is right. Almost through. They camped at the summit, elevation making the night cold enough to see their breath. Beckett built up the fire and they huddled close, sharing body warmth. His arm around her shoulders felt natural, right, like they had been doing this for years instead of days. Worst part is over, Beckett said. From here it is downhill to Colorado and smooth riding to Gunnison. How much farther? 3 days, maybe 4, 3 days, then decisions, then facing her uncle and whatever scheme he had planned. Clara felt her stomach twist with anxiety. Hey. Beckett's voice drew her attention. Whatever happens, you are not alone, remember that. I am trying to. He pulled her closer, and Clara let herself lean into him, resting her head against his shoulder. They sat like that for a long time, watching the fire and not talking, just existing together in the cold mountain night. The next day they descended the eastern slope of the pass. Colorado opened before them in shades of gold and green, valleys and peaks stretching to a distant horizon. It was beautiful in a way that made Clara's chest ache. They followed the Purgatoire River north, the land gentling as they went. They passed ranches and farms, saw more travelers, felt civilization creeping back after weeks of wilderness. Near Trinidad, they stopped to resupply, and Clara bought a new dress, a simple blue cotton that was not mourning black. Time to stop wearing grief, she told Beckett when he raised an eyebrow at the purchase. I will always miss Papa, but I cannot let his death define the rest of my life. That is wise, or selfish, no, just human. The last leg to Gunnison took them through high country, aspen groves and meadows full of wildflowers. The air smelled like pine and snow, even in late August. Clara felt her nervousness building with every mile. They reached the outskirts of Gunnison on a Thursday afternoon. The town sat in a wide valley surrounded by mountains, the Gunnison River cutting through the center. It was bigger than Clara expected, maybe 800 people, with an actual main street, several hotels, churches, and the general bustle of a mining town turned ranching hub. Silver Creek Ranch is north of here, Beckett said. Maybe an hour's ride. Do you want to go straight there or wait until morning? Clara looked at the town, at the setting sun painting the mountains orange and purple. Morning. I need one more night to prepare. All right. They found a hotel, the Mountain View, and Beckett paid for 2 rooms without comment. Clara bathed and changed into her new blue dress, pinning her hair carefully. She studied her reflection, trying to see what Beckett saw when he looked at her. Just a woman, dark hair and brown eyes and too many freckles from 3 weeks in the sun. Ordinary. But maybe that was enough. Beckett knocked on her door at 7. He had cleaned up too, wearing a dark coat over a white shirt, hair combed back. He looked almost formal, and Clara realized this was him trying to make a good impression. "You look nice," she said. "So do you." They went down to the hotel restaurant, a modest room with a dozen tables and a menu chalked on a board. The food was decent, pot roast and potatoes, nothing fancy. They ate slowly, neither wanting the meal to end because it meant confronting the next step. "What will you do?" Clara asked finally. "When we go to the ranch tomorrow, I will ride in with you, introduce myself as your traveling companion, and gauge the situation. If your uncle is welcoming and kind, if my suspicions were wrong, I will tip my hat and ride away. If I am right, if he has plans for you that you do not want, I will make it clear you have other options. He might not take that well, probably not. He might have you thrown off his property." "He can try." Clara pushed food around her plate. "I do not want you getting hurt because of me. I am a grown man, Miss Vance. I can make my own decisions about what risks are worth taking. And I am worth the risk, without question." She looked up and found him watching her with those creek water eyes, steady and sure. "You really mean that? Every word? All right." Clara took a breath. "Then we go tomorrow and see what happens, together. Together." They finished dinner and walked through the town as evening settled. Gunnison was pleasant, prosperous, the kind of place where a person could build a life. Clara tried to imagine living here, tried to picture herself married to a cousin she had never met, trapped in a loveless arrangement for her uncle's convenience. The image made her feel sick. Then she tried to imagine living here with Beckett. A small house, maybe on the edge of town. Room for a garden and a corral, building something together, slow and steady. That image felt right in a way that warmed her from the inside out. "What are you thinking?" Beckett asked. "About the future?" "Different versions of it. Which version do you like best? The one where I am happy." "That is a good version." They stopped outside the hotel. People moved past them on the wooden sidewalk, couples and families and solitary men heading to saloons or home. Normal people living normal lives. Clara wanted that so badly it hurt. "I should sleep," she said. "Big day tomorrow." "Yes." But Beckett did not move. He stood close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, see the faint stubble already darkening his jaw. Clara, it was the first time he had used her given name. The intimacy of it made her heart stutter. "Yes. Whatever you decide tomorrow, I want you to know it has been an honor traveling with you. You are brave and kind and stronger than you give yourself credit for. Any man would be lucky to have you in his life. But you especially." She tried to make it light, teasing, "Me most of all." Then, slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned down and kissed her. Soft, gentle, a question more than a demand. Clara's eyes closed. She rose on her toes, kissing him back, her hand coming up to rest against his chest. She could feel his heart beating fast beneath her palm. The kiss deepened. Beckett's hand came up to cradle her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. Clara felt like she was falling and flying at the same time, every nerve alive, every fear momentarily forgotten. This was right. This man was right. Everything else was just noise. They broke apart slowly. Beckett rested his forehead against hers, both of them breathing hard. "Well," Clara said shakily, "that certainly clarified things." "Did it?" "I am in love with you, Beckett Quinn." "Completely, terrifyingly in love with you." "Good, because I am completely, terrifyingly in love with you too." They stood there on the sidewalk, holding each other, and Clara felt something settle inside her. Peace. Certainty. Whatever happened tomorrow, she would face it with this man beside her, and that made all the difference. "Come to my room," she said quietly. Beckett pulled back to look at her. "Clara, I do not want you to feel you have to. I know I do not have to. I want to. I want one night where I am not afraid, where I am not alone, where I just feel loved. Can you give me that?" "Yes," he said. "I can give you that." They went upstairs hand in hand. Inside her room, Clara lit the lamp while Beckett locked the door. Then they came together again, kissing with more urgency now, hands exploring, clothes becoming obstacles to be removed. The blue dress pooled at her feet. Beckett's shirt joined it. Clara ran her hands over his shoulders, his chest, feeling the strength in him, the controlled power. He was gentle and patient, making sure she wanted each step before proceeding. They learned each other's bodies in lamplight and shadow, finding what gave pleasure, what drew gasps and sighs. When they finally came together, it was with a sense of completion, two pieces finding their fit. After, they lay tangled in the narrow bed, Clara's head on Beckett's chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. The window stood open to the cool night air. Somewhere outside a dog barked and someone laughed, the sounds of town life continuing oblivious to their small, perfect moment. "I am marrying you," Clara said into the darkness. "I am not even going to entertain my uncle's schemes. I am just going to tell him thank you for the offer of help, but I have other plans." "You are sure, completely, are you?" "I was sure the moment I saw you. Everything since has just been confirmation." Clara propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at him. "Then ask me properly." Beckett smiled. "Clara Vance, will you marry me?" "Yes, Beckett Quinn. I absolutely will." They sealed it with a kiss, and then another, and then talking turned to other things, and the night spun out long and sweet. Morning came too soon. They dressed, checked out of the hotel, and rode north under a sky-threatening rain. The mountains loomed larger here, snow-capped peaks against gray clouds. Clara felt her courage wavering as they followed the river road toward Silver Creek Ranch. "Still sure?" Beckett asked, reading her expression. "No, but I am going anyway." That is what courage is, doing the hard thing even when you are scared. The ranch appeared around a bend, sprawling across a wide valley. Clara saw corrals, barns, a large main house built of logs and stone, bunkhouses for the workers, and stock everywhere. Cattle dotted distant fields. Horses filled near paddocks. It was impressive and intimidating in equal measure. They rode up to the main house. A man emerged from the front door before they could dismount, and Clara recognized her uncle immediately. He looked older than she remembered, maybe 50 now, with a large belly and that same dramatic mustache. His eyes were small and calculating. "Clara," Samuel Vance called. "Is that you, girl?" "Hello, Uncle Samuel." Clara dismounted, very aware of Beckett doing the same beside her. "Thank you for your letter. I have come a long way. I can see that." Samuel's gaze flicked to Beckett, assessing. "Who is this?" "Beckett Quinn, sir." Beckett offered his hand. "I accompanied your niece from Texas to make sure she arrived safely." Samuel shook hands reluctantly. "That was not necessary." "Perhaps not, but it gave me peace of mind." Well, you have done your job. You can be on your way. Actually, I would like to speak with you and your niece together if you have a moment. Samuel's eyes narrowed. About what? Clara stepped forward. Uncle Samuel, I appreciate your offer of a home, but I need to be honest with you. I have made other plans. Mr. Quinn has proposed marriage and I have accepted. We will be staying in Gunnison to start our own ranch. The words hung in the air. Samuel's face went from surprise to confusion to anger in rapid succession. Now wait just a minute, he sputtered. You cannot just show up and immediately tell me you are marrying some drifter. I am your family. I am offering you a real home, a real future. I even have a suitor arranged for you, my son Martin. He is looking for a wife and you would be perfect. I do not want to marry your son, Clara said firmly. I do not even know him. You do not know this Quinn fellow either. Actually, I know him quite well. He has been kind, respectful, and honest with me. That is more than I can say for a forced arrangement with a stranger. Samuel's face was turning red. You ungrateful girl, I offer you everything and you throw it back in my face for some saddle tramp. Mr. Vance, Beckett said, his voice level but hard. I understand you are upset, but Clara is a grown woman, capable of making her own choices. She has chosen to marry me, and I will spend the rest of my life making sure she never regrets it. You will not last 6 months. Do you have any idea how hard it is to start a ranch from nothing? I do, actually. And I have the capital, the knowledge, and the determination to do it right. Capital? Samuel laughed bitterly. What do you have? Maybe $100 saved. That will not buy you enough land to graze a chicken. I have $500 and good credit in this town. That is enough to start. Samuel looked between them, clearly searching for another angle. Clara, think about this. Martin is my heir. Marry him and all of this will be yours someday. He gestured at the ranch. Security, wealth, comfort. Can this man offer you that? He can offer me love and respect, Clara said. That is worth more than all the land in Colorado. Love. Samuel spat the word. Love does not keep you warm in winter or put food on the table. Maybe not. But it makes the cold and hunger bearable. Clara moved closer to Beckett and he put his arm around her shoulders. I am sorry, Uncle Samuel. I know you had plans, but they are not my plans. I need to live my own life. For a moment, Samuel looked like he might argue further. Then something in his face closed off, and Clara saw the mean streak Beckett had warned her about. Fine, Samuel said coldly. Make your mistake, but do not come crying to me when it all falls apart. You are no niece of mine if you walk away from this family. The words stung, even though Clara had been expecting them. I can live with that. Then get off my property, gladly. They remounted their horses. As they turned to leave, a younger man appeared in the doorway of the main house. He was maybe 25, soft around the middle, with watery eyes and a weak chin. Martin, presumably. He looked exactly like the kind of man who needed a wife to settle him down because he lacked the will to settle himself. Clara felt a rush of gratitude that she would never have to find out if her assumption was correct. They rode away from Silver Creek Ranch at a canter, not speaking until the buildings disappeared behind them. Then Clara let out a long breath she had not realized she was holding. That went about as well as expected, she said. You did great. I am proud of you. I just burned my only family connection. You burned a connection that was only going to hurt you. That is not the same thing. They slowed the horses to a walk. The threatened rain had not materialized, and the clouds were breaking apart, letting through shafts of sunlight that lit the valley in patches of gold. What now? Clara asked. Now we go back to town, find a minister, and get married. Then we start looking at land. There are parcels for sale all around Gunnison. We will find something with good water and decent grass. Just like that, just like that. Clara laughed, the sound bright and free. You make it sound so simple. It is simple. We love each other, we want to build a life together, so we do it. The details will sort themselves out. I like your confidence. I like everything about you. They rode back to Gunnison holding hands across the gap between horses, planning their future with every mile. By the time they reached town, Clara felt lighter than she had in months. No more fear, no more uncertainty. Just the clear, bright knowledge that she was exactly where she was supposed to be, with exactly the right person. They found a minister at the Methodist church, a kindly man named Reverend Potts, who agreed to marry them that very afternoon. Clara bought a simple white shirtwaist to serve as a wedding dress, and Beckett purchased a new hat for the occasion. They stood in the small church with only the minister and his wife as witnesses, and spoke vows to each other in quiet, serious voices. When the minister said, "You may kiss your bride," Beckett did so thoroughly enough to make Clara blush and Mrs. Potts giggle. They signed the marriage certificate, paid the minister $5, and walked out of the church as husband and wife. The whole thing took less than an hour, but it felt more real and meaningful than any elaborate ceremony could have been. "How does it feel to be Mrs. Quinn?" Beckett asked. "Right," Clara said. "It feels absolutely right." They spent their wedding night in the same hotel, same room, but everything felt different now. More permanent, more significant. They made love slowly, taking their time, learning that this was not just passion but partnership, a promise to weather whatever came together. The next weeks were a blur of activity. They found land 5 miles north of Gunnison, 40 acres with a creek running through it and mountain views that took Clara's breath away. The price was $400. Beckett negotiated it down to $350, and they signed the deed with trembling hands. They lived in a tent while they built a cabin, working side by side. Clara learned to handle an axe and a hammer. Beckett taught her the basics of construction. Neighbors stopped by to help with the roof raising, and Clara cooked for them all, returning to her boarding house skills. The community welcomed them, and Clara felt herself putting down roots in this high mountain valley. They bought 6 horses with Beckett's remaining money, good stock that would form the foundation of their breeding program. Grace, of course, got a place of honor, pensioned off to easy life as Clara's personal mount. By October, the cabin was finished. Small but tight, with a stone fireplace and glass windows and a porch where they could sit and watch the sun set behind the mountains. Clara planted a garden, even though it was too late in the season for much to grow. She wanted to mark the earth as theirs, to say they were staying. Winter came hard and early. They spent long evenings by the fire, talking, reading, planning. Beckett taught Clara to play chess using pieces he carved from pine. She taught him songs her father had loved. They became friends as well as lovers, learning each other's rhythms, finding comfort in routine. In January, Clara realized she was pregnant. She told Beckett on a snowy morning, nervous about his reaction. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing with pure joy, and she knew everything would be fine. Their daughter was born in September of 1876, a healthy, loud baby with a shock of dark hair. They named her Catherine, Kate for short. She was perfect. Beckett proved to be a gentle, attentive father. Clara would wake in the night to find him walking the cabin with Kate against his shoulder, murmuring soft words while she fussed. He built a cradle from cherry wood, sanded so smooth there was not a single rough edge to harm her delicate skin. The horse ranch grew slowly but steadily. Beckett had an eye for good bloodlines and a reputation for fair dealing. People came from 3 counties to buy from him. Clara kept the books and managed the household finances. They did not get rich, but they prospered in the ways that mattered. A second child followed in 1878, a son they named Cade. He was quieter than Kate, more thoughtful with his father's serious gray-green eyes. Then in 1880, another daughter, June, who smiled from the moment she was born and charmed everyone she met. Life settled into a rhythm. Work, family, seasons turning. Gunnison grew around them. The railroad came through, bringing more people, more opportunities. The ranch expanded to 80 acres, then 100. They hired a hand to help with the stock, built a bigger barn, added rooms to the cabin until it was a proper house. In 1882, their fourth child arrived, a son they named Victor. He was sturdy and determined, walking at 9 months and constantly getting into trouble. Clara spent half her time chasing him away from the horses, the creek, the fence, anywhere he was not supposed to be. Then William in 1885. Another boy, this one quiet and bookish like Beckett had been as a child. He would rather read than ride, and Clara loved him for it, loved that her children were becoming their own people with their own interests. The years blurred together in the way happy years do. Clara taught all the children to cook and read. Beckett taught them to ride and work with horses. They celebrated holidays and birthdays, weathered illnesses and accidents, supported each other through hard seasons. Clara sometimes thought about her father and Uncle Samuel. Her father she remembered with love and sadness. Samuel she remembered not at all if she could help it. He had made his choice and she had made hers. She had chosen love and it had given her everything. In the summer of 1887, Clara gave birth to her sixth child, a daughter they named Eliza. Beckett joked that they were going to need a bigger house at this rate, but his eyes were warm when he said it, and Clara knew he loved their full, loud, chaotic life. "Any regrets?" Beckett asked her one evening. They sat on the porch while the children played in the yard, Kate at 15 helping June with her reading, Cade teaching Victor to throw a rope, William reading under a tree, and Eliza toddling after everyone on unsteady legs. "Not a single one," Clara said. "You. Only that I did not meet you sooner. We met when we were supposed to meet. That is very philosophical of you. I am a very wise woman." Beckett laughed and pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. They sat watching their children as the sun sank low, painting the mountains in shades of amber and rose. Grace grazed nearby, old now but still gentle, the mare that had started everything. Clara thought about that day in Fort Worth, how desperate she had been, how lost. She thought about Beckett's offer, one supper for a horse worth $50, the best deal she had ever made, though not for the reasons anyone would expect. "What are you thinking about?" Beckett asked. "That dinner I cooked you, fried chicken and biscuits and apple pie, best meal I ever had." "You say that every time I make fried chicken." "Because it is true every time." Clara swatted his arm playfully. "You are impossible. You love me anyway." "I do. God help me, I really do." They stayed on the porch until stars filled the sky and Kate called them in for supper. The family gathered around the long table Beckett had built, and they ate and talked and laughed. And Clara looked around at all these faces she loved and thought how strange and wonderful life could be. She had left Fort Worth with nothing but empty pockets and a dying father's legacy of debt. She had arrived in Colorado expecting to be trapped by circumstance, forced into a life she did not want. Instead, she had found freedom, love, purpose, and a partner who saw her worth when she was at her lowest. Sometimes the best things in life came from the simplest transactions. A meal for a horse, a kindness for a stranger, trust for trust, love for love, and sometimes a cowboy who looked at you with creek water eyes and offered you the whole world if you were brave enough to take it. Clara had been brave, and she had never looked back. The years continued to turn, bringing new joys and challenges. In 1889, their seventh and final child was born, a daughter they named Tabitha. She came into the world during a spring snowstorm, and Beckett had to ride through 3 feet of snow to fetch the midwife. By the time they returned, Clara had delivered the baby herself with Kate's help, and mother and daughter were doing fine. "You could not wait?" Beckett asked, breathless from the ride, covered in snow. "Tabitha had her own schedule," Clara said tiredly, cradling the tiny girl. "She takes after her father that way. Stubborn." The children grew. Kate became a beautiful young woman with her mother's cooking skills and her father's way with horses. She married a rancher's son in 1890, and Clara cried through the whole ceremony, remembering her own simple wedding in the Methodist church. Cade proved to have his father's quiet competence. He took over more and more of the ranch work, allowing Beckett to slow down as his body accumulated the aches and pains of decades of hard labor. June was the social one, always organizing dances and gatherings, bringing light wherever she went. Victor wanted to be a lawman and left at 18 to join the Marshal Service. William went east to college, studying literature, and came home with ideas about writing novels. Eliza was practical and fierce, announcing at 12 that she intended to run her own ranch someday. And Tabitha, the baby, was sweet-natured and artistic, always drawing the horses and mountains. In 1895, on their 20th wedding anniversary, Beckett took Clara back to the same hotel where they had spent their wedding night. They had dinner in the same restaurant, and Beckett presented her with a necklace he had saved for months to buy, a silver chain with a small horse pendant. "To remember where we started," he said, fastening it around her neck. Clara touched the pendant, tears in her eyes. "As if I could ever forget. We have had a good life, Clara Quinn, the best life. You know I love you more now than I did on our wedding day. That is impossible. You were completely gone for me then." "I was, but love grows. Every year with you, every challenge we face together, every child we raise, it all adds layers, makes it deeper, richer. I love the girl you were, but I am in love with the woman you have become." Clara reached across the table and took his hand. His hair was graying now, lines etched around his eyes from years of squinting into sun and wind. He looked distinguished, handsome in a weathered way. She loved every mark time had left on him. "I would do it all again," she said. "Every hard moment, every worry, every sleepless night. I would do it all again for the privilege of building this life with you." They kissed across the table, and Clara tasted salt from her own tears, but they were happy tears, grateful tears. The new century came. The children married and had children of their own. The ranch that had started with 6 horses now boasted over 50, known throughout Colorado for quality breeding stock. Beckett and Clara became grandparents, then great-grandparents. Their house was always full of family, multiple generations gathering for holidays and celebrations. Clara still cooked enormous meals, her kitchen constantly producing bread and pies and roasts. Beckett still worked with the horses, though at a gentler pace now. They took walks together in the evenings, moving slowly, holding hands, talking about everything and nothing. In the summer of 1910, on a warm August day, they sat on their porch watching great-grandchildren play in the yard. Grace's descendants grazed in the near pasture. The mountains stood eternal and beautiful against a cloudless sky. "You remember what you asked that day in Fort Worth?" Beckett said suddenly, "How much for the horse?" And I said, "1 supper. Best deal I ever made." Clara leaned against his shoulder. "Best deal I ever made too, though I think I got the better end of it. How do you figure?" "I got a horse, a husband, 7 children, a successful ranch, and 35 years of happiness. You got fried chicken." Beckett laughed, the sound warm and rich. "Best fried chicken in Texas, maybe in the whole world, and I got you, which was the whole point. You sweet talking charmer. Only for you." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind of silence that only comes from decades of companionship. Clara thought about the long road from Fort Worth to this porch, all the miles and years between that desperate girl with empty pockets and this contented woman surrounded by family. "Would you change anything?" Beckett asked, reading her thoughts the way he always could. "Not a single thing. Maybe I would have kissed you sooner. That first night in Fort Worth I wanted to, but I thought it would be too forward. It absolutely would have been too forward. I probably would have shot you with Mrs. Henderson's Derringer. Then I am glad I waited. Me too." The sun moved across the sky. The children played. The horses grazed. The world turned as it always had and always would. And Clara and Beckett sat together on their porch. Two people who had found each other against all odds, who had built something lasting from nothing but determination and love. That night, lying in bed with Beckett's arm around her, Clara thought about all the women who might be standing in auction yards right now, desperate and afraid, with empty pockets and uncertain futures. She hoped they would find their own Beckett, someone who would see their worth when they could not see it themselves, someone who would offer kindness when they expected nothing. But more than that, she hoped they would find their own courage. Because in the end, it was Clara's choice that had changed everything. Beckett had offered her an option, but she had been brave enough to take it, to trust a stranger, to believe in the possibility of something better. "Thank you," she whispered into the darkness. "For what?" Beckett mumbled, half asleep. "For seeing me, for loving me, for giving me the chance to choose." He pulled her closer. "Always, forever." And that was the truth of it. Not just the romance, though that was part of it. Not just the passion or the partnership, though those mattered too. But the simple, profound truth that Beckett had given Clara agency in a world that tried to take it away. He had offered her a choice when everyone else wanted to choose for her. He had treated her as an equal when society said she was less. That was love. Real, lasting, transformative love. Clara fell asleep smiling, dreaming of horses and mountains and creek water eyes that had seen straight into her soul and loved what they found there. The years moved on, as years do. Beckett passed away in 1918, peacefully in his sleep, with Clara holding his hand. He was 69 years old, and he died having lived a full, good life, surrounded by family and love. Clara mourned him deeply, but she did not regret a single moment they had shared. She lived another 12 years, staying on the ranch with Cade and his family, watching yet another generation grow up. She told her great-great-grandchildren stories about the old days, about Texas and Fort Worth and the cowboy who traded a horse for a supper. On a clear autumn morning in 1930, Clara woke early and walked out to the pasture where Grace had once grazed. The mare's great-great-granddaughter grazed there now, dappled gray like her ancestor, gentle and patient. Clara leaned on the fence and looked at the mountains, at the land she and Beckett had built from nothing. She thought about that girl in the mourning dress, standing in the auction yard dust, asking a question she never imagined would change her entire life. How much for the horse? One supper. The simplest answer to the most important question. Clara smiled, feeling the morning sun on her face, and knew that somewhere Beckett was waiting for her, that their story was not really over, just paused for a moment. They would find each other again in whatever came next, because some connections transcend time and mortality. She went back to the house, cooked breakfast for her family, and lived the rest of her day fully and well, grateful for every moment, every choice, every chance she had been given. And that evening, as the sun set behind the mountains in shades of gold and rose, Clara Vance Quinn closed her eyes for the last time, content in the knowledge that she had lived exactly the life she was meant to live, with exactly the person she was meant to love. The end came gently, surrounded by family, filled with peace, a life well lived, a love well earned. A bargain struck in a dusty auction yard that had paid dividends beyond measure. How much for the horse? Everything. And it had been worth every penny.